Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, it's not the only one. Beautiful Thursday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Because it looks like now you see, now you don't.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Well, usually when we come at a time like this, there's always a lot of issues to look at, and this time is no different. But this morning we have Mr. Dayo Akintobi joining us to look at the papers. He is the editor-in-chief of TCN. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Akintobi. Well, needless to say, whenever you are here, it's like you are the Speaker of the House. Always having to deal with so many of these issues. Of course, the most prominent one at this time in our nation is that of security. And one wonders if there is any getting away from this in a while. For instance, look at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. And it is the same thing that the Senate is talking about. Nigeria failing on account of insecurity. It's like the Speaker of the House also spoke in the same vein when he was saying that we needed to put aside all kinds of petty issues that come. The Vanguard newspaper has a few writers, asks Buhari to issue executive order to flush out bandits, kidnappers, criminal herdsmen, wants governors to implement livestock plan, senators clash over Akeredolu's quit order, killing, kidnapping of citizens signal government's failure. That's according to the House of Representatives. Plans to amend ACJA Human Trafficking Act, Police Service Commission reforms soon. Say, on cost of governance, we can't keep making laws to set up more institutions. And guess what the presidency says? We haven't got details of story. All of it is on page 5. But what do you make of all of this? It's quite a buffet, I must say.
Well, good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Kayode. Good morning, Chamberlain. And good morning to all our viewers out there. Insecurity is, it seems to be the watchword nowadays. And as you say, all the papers and all the media outlets are focusing on that because it is the key issue in our lives today. Out of everything that came out yesterday, what resonated with me most was the fact that seemingly for the first time, somebody in government is accepting responsibility, which is what I got out of Femi Gbajabiamila, the Speaker of the House's statement yesterday, where he says, we have failed. That admission, to me, is the beginning of a turnaround in getting it right. The fact that someone who is at the helm of affairs in government can for the first time take responsibility and admit that the government has failed in its own efforts to keep the country secure. I think that could be a turning point for us.
But then, so that's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The Speaker,
yes.
Not the President of the Senate, not the President of Nigeria.
Yes.
And it's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. How far-reaching can that be?
Well, let's contextualize this here in terms of the fact that the legislature has a watchdog function over the executive, and it also has equal and separate powers as a division of government. So yes, even though the executive is the one pulling the levers on the actual activities of government, the legislature has an equal say and a powerful say in terms of the fact that the laws they enact, the bills they pass, and the advisory they give to the executive can actually make a difference in the policy thrusts of the executive. So him being number 4 man in the government, saying that is admitting culpability on behalf of the entire government. I think it is important.
But, so admitting failure is one thing.
Yes.
And the question is, what will come out of this admission, if I may use that? Because clearly we've seen that the House of Representatives, in fact, let me just say the National Assembly and the Executive have been at loggerheads. Remember, the President was meant to address the House of Reps over security. but that didn't happen. So what is this meant to achieve if, I mean, admitting that we have failed? What is the big picture really?
Well, you have to first, the beginning of a solution comes with recognizing that you have a problem. And so by virtue of the fact that one arm of government has admitted failure, it puts pressure on the executive to begin to fashion more effective methodologies of addressing this scourge. As you well know, the public perception has been that the administration, especially the executive, has been a bit too nonchalant and lackadaisical about fighting this insecurity war. Look, for example, how long it took to change the security chiefs. Look at how the whole banditry, kidnapping has continued to be rife and continues to escalate. So it seems as if the executive has not had the political will to throw all its resources behind the insecurity fight. So if an equal and opposite arm of government is throwing down the gauntlet and saying we as a group have failed, I think it puts pressure on the executive to begin to ramp up efforts to finally lock horns with this problem and begin to address it in a way that will dampen the flow.
But in the same vein, in that statement that the Speaker of the House of Representatives made, part of what he said was that there is a need now to put aside petty concerns and mention political interests and ethnic interests and things like that. So it would seem like, okay, we have failed and we seem to know where we failed and how we failed, right? And so how do you see government or the people in power or concerned in this matter? How do you see them taking this on board?
Well, you know, there's a natural friction between the divisions of government anyway. As Kayode pointed out earlier, remember the time when the president was supposed to go to the National Assembly and discuss insecurity, and that ended up going pear-shaped. Now we know that there's some degree of friction between them. So for one arm to suddenly take responsibility for the entire structure, I think it is indirectly lighting a fire underneath the executive branch and getting it up and going, basically calling out the executive, really, and saying, you've not done well enough. It's time for us to ramp up efforts on this because all Nigerians are fed up of this issue.
Sincerely. All right. Well, the Vanguard newspaper has so many other stories, including this one right above the nameplate. It's unfair to criticize Zamfara governor for granting amnesty to bandits. That's ascribed to the federal government. The story is on page 14. Let's find out details on the inside pages. The back page has so many sports stories to choose from. Let me leave you to take your pick. That's the Vanguard today.
Well, if you take a look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, this is what you'd see. Senators to Buhari issue executive order to flush out criminals, ban open grazing. Akeredolu's eviction order divides lawmakers. That story is on page 2. So the National Assembly is back. There's a lot, I must say, waiting for them to resolve, a huge chunk on their table. So clearly they're starting off with security, and we've largely discussed that this morning. So it's a job of work, as Chamberlain would say, and the days ahead really will count for the National Assembly. But see this one, independent petroleum marketers, tanker drivers threaten to stop loading fuel today. I mean, just where you thought, okay, maybe we could just, I mean, find out. And what do you make of this? Page 7.
Well, there was a big clamor for deregulation. But what we need to recognize is once deregulation happens, then anytime oil prices go up, landing cost also goes up. Now, the converse of that is that when oil prices go down, we should see a downward spiral at the pump. Which,
does that really apply here, though? What goes up, does it really come down?
In Nigeria, the laws of gravity seem to work the opposite way. Once it goes up, it never comes
Stays
down
up
again. But yeah, I mean, that's the workings of deregulation. In a free market economy where crude oil and the petroleum industry in general is deregulated, you will continue to see fluctuations. But remember, when the price of oil is now verging at $60 a barrel, we as a country are generating more revenue. So the key thing is the additional money that's coming into government coffers should translate into meaningful social services for the people. It should translate into stimulus packages, cheaper transportation, even if the price of fuel goes up momentarily, there should be an equal and commensurate benefit to the people from the increase in the revenue that the government is deriving within that period.
I mean, that only sounds logical. Now
Absolutely.
that they're planning to reduce the cost of production to $10, that will mean more revenue as well. So,
Yes.
goodness. So,
Shouldn't it also translate to more revenue to fix the refineries?
Well, the refinery issue has been a long-standing problem. A lot of money has been thrown at it. The refineries it's not that they're not functioning because of a lack of money thrown at it. They've thrown money at it since 1999, and they've continued to throw money at turnaround maintenance, and we've never been able to get it right. So maybe we should look forward to the private refineries coming online and the smaller modular refineries. One was inaugurated, I think, in Bayelsa a couple of weeks ago, and those are starting to come on stream, and they're starting to make more local supply available, which ultimately will make the cost of petrol cheaper for us.
All right, let's take a look at The Guardian next, and they have a different perspective to what earlier papers have looked at here. COVID-19 immunization plans under scrutiny. Experts say FG must conclude clinical trials on jab. Nigeria to isolate, confirm South Africa's strain of virus. Now, it turns out that this plan to immunize 30% of the citizens here, papers reporting here that they might be under scrutiny because South Africa, they paused, administration of that vaccine because they were saying that it reduced the protection that it offers to their own strain of the virus. So they said, whoa, hold on a minute. We may not move forward on this one. And besides, it turned out that the expiration date for the vaccine, April. They didn't even see that until they landed in SA. So they have huge challenges. And so we're saying here, our own scientists are saying, well, maybe haven't seen what's going on there. Think maybe we should have a second look at this one.
I recall reading somewhere coming from the presidency that any vaccine that comes into this country is subject to NAFDAC approval. It's not as if simply because it's been approved elsewhere, it'll come here and we start immediately disbursing to people or inoculating people with it, that it would still be subject to clinical trials and approval by NAFDAC. So what's been in the news lately seems to be information whereby there seem to have been some adverse reactions to vaccinations and some side effects to vaccinations that were not anticipated before. This may be because there's been a rush to produce this because of the fact that it's been an emergency. Under normal circumstances, vaccines are not developed, tried, approved, and disbursed for 18 months to 2 years.
It's not even been tested, not even on animals.
No, it hasn't. So I think the fact that this is a crisis situation has led them to cut some corners and rush this thing to production. And so maybe there needs to be a bit of brakes applied.
Is this in any way going to perhaps, give us the wake-up call, fix the healthcare system here? Scientists, research on vaccines, let's up the ante because, it will always start from home.
Well, one thing that COVID did was it exposed the rot in the healthcare system, the shortcomings, the inadequacies, and the fact that our healthcare is ill-equipped, our healthcare sector is ill-equipped to handle any sort of an outbreak. We did have a vaccination laboratory in Nigeria that was put to pasture for renovation several years ago and never brought back on stream. There's not been any investment in the laboratory. And even the healthcare sector, if you look at the budget and you look at the allocation to health, it's infinitesimal.
Well,
we definitely, this is definitely a wake-up call.
If this doesn't give us that wake-up call, I wonder what will. Anyway, Omakwa is also ready with something.
Indeed, gentlemen, it's just that I'm wondering the wake-up call. Have we really woken up is the question that one will be asking when it comes to health in Nigeria. Looking at Blueprint for you this morning, insecurity in Nigeria is their lead headline. They have it there in small red letters. Time running out. Senate declares vows to subject new service chiefs to rigorous screening. senators call for state police. When they say that they're going to have rigorous screening for service chiefs, what sort of questions would you be expecting to hear on the floor of the Senate, if indeed they make it open?
Well, that's interesting because, as you know, it's already been a lot of furor about why would service chiefs be appointed as or be nominated by the president as non-career ambassadors. But leaving the politics out of it aside, I would think that one would try to focus on the service chief's experience in terms of security and assume that they will be posted to foreign countries with which we believe some of our internal security problems are coming from, like our neighbors, Mali, Niger. We have a tendency to think that some of the cowherders or some of the Fulanis who are nomads and who are citizens of neighboring countries have a tendency to stray across our borders. So I would think that it would be logical.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Akintobi.
Yes.
I think that there's a bit of a confusion right now. So only recently, the president also submitted the names of the new service chiefs he's just appointed to the Senate. Their names have been read out on the floor of the Senate for confirmation. Don't forget that there was actually some controversy as to whether or not the president was supposed to have submitted their names first as opposed to appointing them first. You know, they're supposed to be in acting capacity because it needs Senate confirmation. I think this is what the rider is saying. Yes, there's some confusion because the old service chiefs too were appointed as ambassadors designate. And I think that the Senate is also going to debate that. But this one is vows to subject new service chiefs to rigorous screening.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Absolutely, they should, because as we know, they're coming into a theater of operation that requires quite a bit of passion, a bit of experience, a bit of knowledge. So one would really put their feet to the fire and be sure that not only are they capable, I'm sure that for the president to have appointed them, he has the confidence that they can do the job. But nonetheless, they need to be able to persuade the Senate that to get confirmation that they really will actually be able to live up to the task and attack this issue of insecurity headlong. So I would expect the Senate to ask them questions, for example, like what would you do differently from what your predecessors did that didn't seem to have worked, because insecurity did not reduce under their watch, rather it escalated. So the kind of questions I would ask is, what would you do differently that your predecessors didn't do? What are some of the kind of funding you'll be requesting for government to do exactly what? For example, we've been hearing about drones. We've been hearing about various methodologies with which to address the insecurity issues. So I would want to know what they would do differently and why we should entrust them with this enormous task.
Well, let's leave it there for blueprints, but not without taking this particular story. You could, ruminate on it. Fani Kayode has joined APC, that's according to Bello. No, I'm still in PDP. That's according to the ex-aviation minister. That story is also there for you on page 13 of Blueprint newspapers. Gentlemen.
Well, the Nigerian News Direct has this one. Senate confirms Ahmed Kuru and Hassan Bello as AMCON NDIC CEOs. You find the story on page 14 of Nigerian News Direct this morning. So many other issues to look at on the front page, but this one is of interest to me, right above the nameplate. Court orders CBN to unfreeze NSAS promoters' accounts. Again, that story is on page 14. Listening to the SAN, Mr. Femi Falana, on this one, you would wonder if indeed there was any court order indeed in the first place. If there was no court order, according to him, that said that should happen, how come this happened? And that he also referenced the fact that it never happened all through the time that were in the build-up to the 1993 on the subsequent days and months and years after the 1993 June 12 elections cancellation. One wonders, what do you make of this?
Well, to begin with, it seemed rather unconscionable and out of place for this kind of a step to have been taken against people who were exercising their constitutional rights to protest against something they felt was affecting the quality of life of Nigerians. I, first of all, really wondered, what did the CBN have to do with insinuating itself into what essentially was a political matter? But of course, the CBN is supposed to be autonomous, and it shouldn't necessarily be subject to directive of the executive. But the CBN got involved in this thing. I doubt it could have done it without a court order. If Stafalanos says it didn't have a court order, the jury is still out on that. But whether it did it with a court order or without a court order, I still think it was out of place. And I think it was part of a system of steps leading to intimidation of the protesters. There are so many things that happened then, from people being put on a no-fly list, to accounts being frozen, to... if you even remember, this issue of accounts being frozen almost derailed the Lagos State Tribunal, because the youth representatives who are among those whose accounts were frozen eventually said they were not participating in the tribunal. They were prevailed upon to go back later and continue to participate in the process, but it almost derailed the tribunal hearings.
And it looks as if that matter is far from over right now.
Well, look at it. There's a protest planned for this Saturday, and all of a sudden now we unfreeze the accounts. Is there a link between those two those two occurrences?
Well, you see, Daily Trust this morning takes another matter into concern, and it says, concerns as Peace Corps makes fresh push for legal cover. Outfit sustains operations in Abuja, major cities. You might have heard about the Peace Corps. That's the United States Peace Corps. But this is the Nigerian Peace Corps we're talking about here, which is an NGO. But apparently, there's a bill at the National Assembly that wants to make it legal. And I'm just thinking, if there are almost 200,000 members of Peace Corps, wouldn't that be a good addition, to the security, what do they call it, architecture or security manpower? But it's a whole lot, really, and it's on page 4 of Daily Trust this morning. But let's keep our eyes on this one also. Basic education short of 278,000 teachers. It's on page 25 of the Daily Trust. So a lot to chew on, really, this morning. But let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
Look at Daily Independent now. Anger, despair, sentiments as Senate tackles insecurity. Well, they have a host of riders. Urges governors to execute National Livestock Transformation Plan, warns operatives to deploy drones, helicopters to monitor forests, asks FG to review ECOWAS protocol on free movement into Nigeria. And then they also have this part: Nigeria can't curtail new variant of COVID-19. That's according to experts. So we focused on this already. Do we still have one more there, Markwe?
Yes, we do. We have leadership, and we also have New Telegraph for you. You see that reps disagree with Senate on Constitution review is the lead story on the front page of leadership. Reject 2014 confab. APC committee reports to merge unproductive agencies. That's also there. How would they qualify unproductive agencies? Well, you might want to read page 4. Constitute 20-man committee to screen service chiefs. So from the look of things, it does look like it might be closed door. And you also see there, federal government approves new debt management strategy for Nigeria. That is on the front page of leadership. New Telegraph has this one. Senate to Buhari declare state of emergency on insecurity, rolls out measures to tackle challenges, insist on state police. Senators, security forces must flush out foreign herders. That's also there. And they have the story on debt. FEC approves debt policy guide, prioritizes domestic borrowing. Are we going to see an increase on rates, say, on treasury bills or on bonds? Or what exactly do you think this would involve? Well,
treasury bills have been almost in negative territory these days. It seems as if they would actually pay us, or we would have to pay them to keep our money safe for us. I would say that based on the recession that we're in at the moment, based on the COVID-inspired lockdown and the effects it has had on the economy, that at this point, interest rates cannot be any better than what they are. As long as we continue, the CBN continues to pull the levers the way it's going, I would say that its monetary policy is trying to shore up the deficiencies of the economy. And let's give it a bit of time. I think things will stabilize and we'll begin to see an uptick in terms of money.
Well, okay, then we'll look forward to that as a matter of fact. Well, that is it with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Thank you for coming on, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of TCN.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, we will be back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, joining us this morning to shed light on the decision yesterday concerning the account of some EndSARS protesters that were freezed by the CBN, Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well,
good morning.
Okay, just give us the background. I mean, what is the situation concerning those accounts? Is it that all is now well with those accounts that were freezed from off the EndSARS protesters?
With profound respect to the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami Esse, who I just spoken through your medium, I want to believe that he has not been fully briefed with respect to what happened yesterday and in this case. Whereas in October last year, the Central Bank of Nigeria went out of its way to apply for another ex parte to freeze the accounts of the EndSARS protesters, 20 of them, 20 among the leaders, on November 4, whereas the Central Bank was asking for 180 days to investigate the 20 people for alleged money laundering and terrorism and sundry offenses. So the court gave the order on the 4th of November. Instead of 180 days, the court gave the Central Bank 90 days to commence and conclude investigation into the accounts or the activities of these young men and women. For the 90 days, throughout the duration of the order, there was no investigation at all. So because no offense was committed, because these young men and women were exercising their freedom of expression, guaranteed by Section 39 of the Constitution and freedom of assembly guaranteed by Section 40. So it was a case of sheer intimidation. But by last week, February 4, the order expired. And so we were in court yesterday to continue with the hearing of the matter. And I informed the court, the order has expired. Of course, the Central Bank had attempted to renew the order. So, no, you cannot renew an expired order. If you wanted to renew, it ought to have been renewed while the order was valid and subsisting. So the court decided to strike out the case yesterday because both sides withdrew all applications pending in court. So the question of filing an appeal does not arise because the order had expired. So the government cannot file any appeal because the government had withdrawn all the applications filed. And so the court struck out the case of the Central Bank. I do hope that sufficient lessons have been learned, particularly by the Central Bank, to desist from jumping into the political arena by attempting to freeze the accounts of people who were involved or who are involved in a struggle one way or the other against the government. For when the Central Bank does that, you have left the business of banking and then you've strayed into the political terrain. And it's a dangerous terrain.
Right. So let's try to break this down. When you say that the CBN got that order, told the court that, well, we need this order to investigate these accounts or account holders for alleged terrorism and the rest, and the court granted the order. But now you say that within those 90 days, the CBN did not conduct any investigation whatsoever. So does that mean that the CBN misled the court?
Of course. Of course. The CBN misled the court into believing that grave offenses have been committed and we needed time to investigate them. And the court said, okay, based on your one-sided story, and for a central bank, no court will want to will not want to give some kind of consideration to the claim of the central bank of a country. And this is the central bank of the largest, black nation on earth, And so the order made the order. The court made the order. But I am saying no offense was committed. No attempt was made by the central bank to investigate anybody. None of my clients was invited for questioning because no offense was committed. And that is why the central bank will have to be more circumspect in future. Because my clients are going to court to challenge the gross violations of their right to property. They were denied access to their bank accounts for over 90 days, which is totally uncalled for because the government cannot recognize the right of Nigerians to protest. While you turn around to either seize their account or freeze their account or deny them consular services, seize the passport, not allow them to renew their passport and so on and so forth. And that was why I did inform the press yesterday. I suffer from, personally, I was in agony because I was in the forefront of the battle, the titanic battle against military dictatorship in our country. And on no occasion was my account frozen. Even though our passports were seized, we usually, had them returned to us through the court. We were charged with all manners of offenses, including treasonable felony. We admitted to bail in liberal terms. The courts were convinced that we're fighting for the restoration of democracy in our country. And again, this is where I'm going to appeal to our court, our judges, to restrain from granting ex parte orders. The court should now, having regards to our experience, the court should advise those who bring these applications to put the other person on notice.
Right.
Because that was also what happened yesterday with Mr. Last year with Mr. Omoyele Sowore, when the State Security Service approached the Federal Court. We need 90 days to investigate this guy for money laundering, terrorism, and so on and so forth. And the court said, no, I will give you 45 days. Throughout the 45 days, there was no investigation for money laundering on terrorism.
So Mr. Falana,
at the end of the day, Sowore was not charged with terrorism.
So, as you have said, there seems to be a pattern here. You've mentioned the case of Mr. Sowore and now the CBN. So, if indeed the court was misled by the CBN, should there be any repercussion from the court? Yes, you say that your clients may go to court or are going to court to challenge this or to get some form of damages. But from the court itself, shouldn't there be some repercussion? Because if there's a trend, then this might happen in the future.
No, I am very sure now with what has happened in some of the cases I've just mentioned. And there are others. I'm sure our courts will now be more careful when these kind of applications, when these sort of applications, are filed in court, having regards to our recent experience, to obviate such gross abuse of the rights of Nigerians. And the court will not lose anything by saying, oh, these are NSAS protesters, oh, this is a political activist. Please, can you put him on notice? So that I will hear both sides before I can make an order. Where you cannot show that a Nigerian there is reasonable suspicion that a criminal offense has been committed, you cannot violate the rights of a Nigerian. And that is the position. So the courts expect us now. The ball is back in our court. And that is why the NSAS protesters have now instructed us, you must please go to court and challenge the violations of our right to property for over 3 months.
Well, one of the things that readily comes to mind now is the role of the judiciary in all of these that we're talking about. Well, some other cases like this, as you have said, have risen, and a number of people are wondering, is there a role for the NBA in all of these, given the fact that on the one hand is the lawyer, on the other hand is you, a lawyer as well, and the issue seems to be something that maybe shouldn't even have gotten that far in the first place. The ex parte order gave the reason of financing terrorism as the reason why those accounts were frozen. And then they were supposed, according to even from what you have also said, ask for an extension of that order of something that was not really real. So the question then is there something the legal practice should have done to stave off this kind of thing that, as you have said, is clear violation of human rights?
Well, I think there is a challenge before the bar and the bench. As I did say, I am convinced beyond any shadow of doubt that our cause will have to be more circumspect when these type of applications are filed in court or brought to court. With respect to lawyers, again, we have to do what is done in other jurisdictions. I mean, you have just witnessed the attempt by the immediate past president of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump, to use the judiciary to endorse his false claim of electoral fraud. About 62 cases were filed. And in many of the cases, the judges threatened to refer the lawyers to the disciplinary committee of the bar in that country. If you cannot prove before me now evidence of electoral fraud, and majority of the lawyers had to withdraw, knowing the implications. And that was why, within 2 months, the American judiciary, the American courts, were able to dismiss up to the Supreme Court all the frivolous cases filed by the Trump group. We must get to that stage here where a lawyer can simply not say, oh, that was my brief from my lawyer. No, you must also.
We hope we'll be able to get Mr. Falana back in this
also do your homework before you must do your homework or terrorism before I can file this application. Where a lawyer has refused to do that, I also believe that the law allows us to also challenge such lawyers so that we can get our judiciary to be respected. All the cases that embarrass our courts are filed by lawyers, in many cases by senior lawyers. So we've got to a stage now where we have to ensure that lawyers are brought to book. I mean, I know of an instance where a senior lawyer, an attorney general of this country, wrote to the INEC, don't obey a court order. Of course, the bar didn't do anything, but the party involved went to court that this guy is not a fit and proper person to hold any public office in Nigeria. The federal also found the man went on appeal, he lost the appeal. So forever, he cannot hold a public office in Nigeria. And this is how it should be. And this is the only way to teach a lesson that you cannot continue to use the court to perpetrate perfidy.
Well, it would seem that the bar has its job cut out for it. I know that there is a disciplinary committee. Let's even wait and see if there is any such thing that's going to be taken to that disciplinary committee. But another question comes to mind here, Mr. Falana, and that is the question of whose errand is the CBN serving here? Whose bidding is the CBN doing when they freeze the accounts of young people who were alleged to have been financing terrorism and they were never investigated because clearly, from what you have said, it's something that didn't happen. Some would say that there is an attempt at some protectionist intentions by the CBN.
No, I would not want to engage in speculation. And it's for you guys in the media to also challenge the central bank. You have done this. Is that the end of the matter? Will you do this again? Will you seize accounts again? Will you freeze accounts again? But in all this, the role of lawyers is so important. The role of lawyers is so important because these frivolous applications are filed by lawyers. I mean, this is not just the only one. There was a lawyer that went to court and got an order that the police should investigate about 50 other NSAS protesters, and including my son. Up till now, and that's about 2 months ago, up till now, nobody has invited any of them because there is no basis. The president of the country has repeatedly maintained that young people, indeed all Nigerians, have the right to protest peacefully. And these guys were protesting peacefully until thugs were unleashed on them in Abuja and Lagos. They even arrested some of the thugs, handed them over to the police, but no investigation was carried out. So in this kind of environment in which we have found ourselves, the central bank will have to, I do hope that the central bank will never, ever again involve itself in what is purely a political matter, so that you do not use that bank, you do not discredit that bank that is supposed to be independent, supposed to be autonomous, even of the government, so that it can perform its primary responsibility of acting as a bank of the government.
Well,
not as an errand boy of the government. Shopping for forum shopping for ex-party orders all over the place. Thereby passing the judiciary.
Mr. Fadana, young people, again, they were really angry. I think some of them largely still are with the CBN, this time because of the directive concerning Bitcoin. Because, the CBN has said, look, this connected with terrorism, and some of those young people who are angry think that it's partly linked to the NSAS matter. But can this go as, look, this is different, this is primary responsibility of the CBN?
No, the CBN has nothing to do with Nigerians exercising their freedom of expression, their freedom of assembly. The CBN has nothing to do with it. In fact, this will surprise you. Section 94 of the Electoral Act, 2010 as amended, Section 83 of the new Police Act 2020, have imposed a duty on the police to provide adequate security whenever there is a protest in Nigeria for or against the government. So if that had happened last year, the unfortunate, tragic situation whereby the so-called hoodlums hijacked the protest would not have happened if the police had done its work by ensuring that those unarmed, peaceful protesters were guided in line with the provisions of the law.
Indeed. So largely, you're talking about how there was no investigation into the accounts of the young people that whose accounts were frozen. And indeed, Chamberlain did pose that question about cryptocurrencies, the investigation that was we were not sure if it's an investigation, but the CBN policy that was revived, banks were reminded of. I was wondering whether you saw any connection there between the protests that happened, because some people had made claims that largely the protests were sustained based on the remittances of funds from diaspora through cryptocurrencies. And now we saw, in January or February, we see the CBN coming up to say, banks, we have to remind you that this policy is in existence. Did you see any linkage whatsoever with that particular policy?
Neo-colony. Our country is a satellite of imperialism. It was the United States government that asked the central bank to stop cryptocurrency in Nigeria because, according to the West, a few Nigerians are engaged in some fraudulent practices. And so we didn't, as a country, stand up to challenge the West, the United States of America. But you also have currency in your country. So why are you asking us to stop it? And again, we have to understand that we're operating a democratic system of government, whereby if you are going to stop anybody's right, if you are going to violate anybody's right in the public interest, you must go to court and get a court order founded on facts, not on speculation. And that is the position. That is the position of the law.
You have also...
Even on a military dictatorship, you couldn't arrest me or detain me without a detention order. But under a democratic government, I mean, I was listening to somebody as, the government is going to obey the order, not out of intimidation. I beg your pardon. You shouldn't use such language in a democracy. We shouldn't debate whether a government should obey a court order or not. It's given.
I'm wondering how this must be a little personal for you, though. I mean, this particular case, you have been a human rights lawyer for many years. I mean, that's where you earned your stripes. I'm wondering how much of a change would you say the human rights landscape has changed, by in the last couple of years, seeing the sort of cases that you have, and then now, I mean, you also mentioned the fact that your son was, was involved in this, the fact that somebody went to court, to ask that, the accounts of 50 other NSAS protesters be investigated, including your son. How personal is this for you when you look at, the changing landscape of human rights in Nigeria?
Well, I will tell you that very unfortunately, we're almost back to the dark days of full military dictatorship in Nigeria. And I had an occasion last year with respect to the case of Sowore, Colonel Dasuki and others to remind President Muhammadu Buhari that as a military dictator, he complied with all court orders for the release of Nigerians. And I listed about 13 cases where the court made orders for the release of Nigerians under the State Security Detentions of Persons Decree number 2 of 1984. So I was therefore, including my humble self, I was detained and the court said, release him. And I was released. Under the military president, General Ibrahim Babangida, were detained several times, were charged even with reasonable felon. The court said release them on bail, who were released. I therefore could not fathom how a democratic government will say, we are not going to obey court orders on the basis of national security. It was unheard of. Even under the military, not to talk of a democratic government. But the point I'm making, I can tell you this. On paper, formally, we have one of the best human rights law regimes in the world. Chapter 4 of the Constitution, African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Law Anti-Torture Act, Administration of Criminal Justice Act, all of them. But they are served in their breach by the government, because I believe very strongly that the government has not appreciated that we are not a conquered people. Otherwise, you will not be saying, we're not going to obey a court order because of national security. It is who determines national security. It is the court. Based on facts made available to it, the court will say, we may not even have a hearing in the open court if you can show that having public hearing will offend or will affect negatively the security of the state. The court will say, okay, we shall hear you in chambers. But that is not the issue. Somebody will just make a pronouncement in the Ministry of Justice. We are not going to comply with that order on the basis of national security. How dare you, in those days, make such... you will find yourself in Kuje prison or Kirikiri for making such an outlandish, contemptuous statement that has the capacity to make people disrespect our court. No, it shouldn't come from the government. So we have a good human rights regime on paper, but we have a terrible human rights record. And Nigerians must begin to hold government accountable. I mean, you can't have people, for instance, the right to life is the most precious, is the most important fundamental right, because you need to be alive to enjoy other rights. So you can't have a situation, as mentioned earlier, where somebody or some people will be going around with AK-47 rifles, killing people, and the government will not hold them responsible and charge them with murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and the rest of them.
All right, then, Mr. Fanana. Well, we do thank you. Oh boy, we keep going, keep losing you and then coming back. But we do thank you for your perspectives this morning, Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
All right. Well, back in a moment, we'll be talking about security. You saw the perspective of what happened in the National Assembly. Those also will be part of our conversation coming up next.
January 11th. Gunmen kill 3 mobile policemen in Ughelli, Delta State, carting away rifles and 120 rounds of ammunition. January 31st. Gunmen abduct US-based Nigerian Dennis Abuda along the Benin bypass and kill him despite collecting ransom from the family. February 8th. Bandits kill no fewer than 23 people and injure many in Kaduna State. These are just few of the violent crimes recorded barely 2 months into 2021, leaving a trail of deaths and destruction across the country. The Senate resumes plenary on Wednesday, with lawmakers troubled by the relentless insecurity in the country and seeking solutions to the crisis.
Mr. President, we're all in denial, especially government. And if we were not in denial, we would have declared insecurity a national emergency, the way we declared COVID a national emergency. The figures that are coming out of insecurity are higher than the figures that are coming out of COVID.
We have set up a committee that have worked on restructuring, and I believe the committee have submitted their report. This is one angle in which we should start looking at.
There were also reactions to herders-farmers conflict, with differing views on how the crisis should be managed.
I find it difficult to believe in the 21st century that a governor of a state who has taken oath to preserve and protect the Constitution of Nigeria, which embodies fundamental human rights, fundamental rights of residents, will come openly to ask people who are not indigenous of his state to leave his state on the pretext of something that they are doing, and their cost of law.
No Nigerian is being sent away from anywhere. Criminals are being sent away from the forest where they are. And so, when we now come here and say, some people, after doing this thing and they're sending people away, you send the wrong message out. Instead of general insecurity in Nigeria, should be the menace of Fulani herdsmen in Nigeria.
At the end of a debate, lawmakers asked President Buhari to direct the newly appointed service chiefs to reorganize the country's security architecture to efficiently respond to the security crisis. They are also urging state governors to implement the National Livestock Transformation Plan to address the farmer herder conflicts in the country. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Yes, indeed. We've got Major General Obi Umahi joining us this morning. As you've seen there, former GOC 81 Div, also former directing staff in Command and Staff College, National Defense College, commanding officer 72 Airborne Battalion, commanding Army Task Group Operation Restore Hope. He's had 2 active tours for ECOMOG operations. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, at the moment, huge concerns about security all over the country. We just listened to a debate in the Senate. The House of Reps eventually had theirs as well about how to proceed concerning the challenges facing us regarding security. You've heard a lot of all of this. What's your impression of how we're either debating this or the plans we have for it.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this program. It is rather very disturbing that we have gotten to this level of insecurity in Nigeria. I think that this nation is not giving the security situation the shot it deserves. Like someone suggested, Nigeria should have entered into a state of emergency to address insecurity in this country. But what you hear sometimes is very disturbing. Rather than address insecurity for all that it is worth, people tend to politicize it. People tend to turn it to a religious issue. If a particular nationality has turned insecurity into business, a spade should be called a spade. It should not be mixed up with politics. It should not be mixed up with religion. What is fair is fair. It is fair for the government of the Federation to look straight in the eyes of security and call it what it deserves to be called and address it the way it's supposed to be addressed.
Can we absorb security agencies of anything here, because they're professionals? They're supposed to carry out their jobs in the best professional way as they have been trained. But from what you're seeing, is that the case?
Well, it is not right to just single out the security agencies and blame them, though it is their responsibility. But the truth is that where there is national emergency on a particular subject, all the resources of the nation are diverted towards solving that problem. If Nigeria has seen insecurity as a national emergency, every sector of this nation, including individuals, will be involved. It's not security agencies alone. Security agencies could be working and they could be sabotaged. And that is what I see happening in this security situation in this nation. Some people that see this thing as a religious issue, they walk along their religious beliefs. I think they sabotage the efforts of the security agencies. Some people, for political gains, will want to sabotage the efforts of the security agencies. Some people, for what they are making illegally out of this insecurity situation in this nation, they want to sabotage the efforts of the security agencies. So we should look at this whole thing holistically, not just single out security agencies as if the security agencies can on their own alone solve the insecurity situation in Nigeria. No, it is not so. Even an individual could make a difference. It took an old woman sitting in her house, looking out through the window to saw that Omar Odiko was being created and taken out of his house. And she reported. So it will take every Nigerian to put in efforts to solve this insecurity situation in this nation. Security is for everybody. Let's not single out security agencies alone and in a blame game.
General, looking at it from the angle that you have just taken it now, it is interesting to say that indeed there are political players, just as you are saying, and a good number of people have said that as well. But the reason we're looking at the angle of the security agencies is because of the tasks they have of, number one, preventing insecurity and then subsequently fighting the insecurity. It is part of the functions of security agencies at various levels to prevent the insecurity challenges by knowing ahead of time through intelligence that these things are happening and consequently do whatever they can to nip it in the bud before it becomes a full-blown security challenge as we have on our hands now. So in terms of preventing insecurity, would you say that we have done well?
No, I will not say that we have done well. We have the potentials. We have the capacity to do better. We have not done all we are supposed to do. Truth be told, the security agencies have a role to play. But there is, in every military operation, there is what is called force multiplier. When the entire nation is committed to solving insecurity problem, it becomes a force multiplier for the security agencies. It's a force multiplier because they could get intelligence from any source. A call giving information about adversaries could make a difference in an entire operation. Just one call. And also a call from the negative side, giving information to the adversaries, could make a whole lot of difference on the side of our security agencies. Our security agencies, because the nation is balkanized, the nation is divided, they have been made, they have been in danger. They are exposed to a lot of danger. When all of us are not committed to solving the insecurity problem in Nigeria, we have, directly or indirectly, we are indirectly or indirectly exposing our security agencies to danger. And of course, like it is known to everybody, we have lost so many gallant men and women. So I say again, the security agencies could put their acts right. The security agencies could come up with workable concepts of operations. The security agencies could tidy themselves up and come up with strategies, with campaigns that can win this war. But without getting support from this nation, from the executive, from the legislative, from the judiciary, it can't work. For instance, imagine where some people are arrested for insecurity activities and are taken to court, and there is a revolving door. They just enter through one end and they get out through the other end. How can that not be a frustrating factor for the security agencies? Imagine where some operation has been planned and someone, even within the military or within the security agencies, because of religious persuasion, carries phone and call adversaries. And then his colleagues move into the bush and they are slaughtered. I mean, all these contradictions in this country, we need to address them so that we can have peace in Nigeria. We have the security agencies that are capable of giving Nigeria peace, but the sabotage is beyond measure.
Who then is sabotaging the efforts of security agencies, General?
Well, you know, it's not possible to begin to mention names. But when you hear some contrary vibrations, for instance, if Maeti Allah can rise up and say that, yes, this attack in so and so place was done by them, and that worse will be coming, and no arrest was made, no one charged to court, what do you think? It's like giving them the right to do whatsoever they like. And if they are allowed, if they are treated that way, I tell you, some other groups across the nations, across the length and breadth of the nation, could also assume that they also have the privilege to take action because Maeti Allah is allowed that privilege. And that is where confusion comes in. That is where trouble comes in. That is where insecurity is amplified. I am saying specifically that we should, as a nation, call a paid. If A is responsible for any insecurity issue, that A, irrespective of where he comes from, irrespective of whom he is, must be dealt with. That's what I am saying. We have had across time and season of people who speak anyhow, who give directives anyhow. These people must leave. These people must, and nothing is done by the appropriate agencies. I mean, that is a signal of insecurity. That's a signal of freedom to act the way you want. And I think that is compromising the security of this nation.
So essentially, rather than seeing this as one ethnicity against the other, one religion against the other, this is basically Nigerians versus crime. And I think largely you have touched on that. But also listening to some of the submissions at the National Assembly yesterday, they dealt or really looked at the issue of security in the country. You'll hear some of them saying or reiterating what has been said about some foreigners being responsible for these attacks, state of insecurity in the country. There's an international conspiracy at work here. And it really begs the question, how is it that foreigners from outside of the country can comfortably cause this much mayhem, not just over a few days, over months, and still seem to be getting away with it?
I think it's a failure of governance. It's a failure of governance. The first need of man is security. Therefore, any group of people entrusted, that we have entrusted our rights of self-protection to, those people should do everything possible to protect Nigerians. That is their primary task. It is wrong to open our borders to vandals. It is wrong to blame foreigners for invading this nation, and yet nothing is done about it. It is most unimaginable that you know that such foreigners armed are in forest reserves, and the security agencies have not received marching order to enter into all the forests and get rid of the criminals. 10 years ago, nobody called Fulanis, associated Fulanis with criminality. No, nobody associated them with criminality. Criminality was just limited to cattle rustling, and that's where it ended. But if people are calling Fulani today, it's not all Fulanis that are contributing to insecurity in Nigeria. It's the bad ones. The good ones are so wonderful, so warm, can relate with across the sections of this nation. But these evil ones that came from outside the shores of this nation, they are the ones that are responsible for insecurity in most parts of this nation. And I dare say that the government should give marching order to security agencies to move into the forest and flush them out. Without that, there will be no peace in this nation. And if it is not done, it means that the government is not committed to giving this nation the security it deserves. That's my position.
You know, that sounds simple enough, give a marching order, and you wonder just how difficult can that be. But you've also had to lead the Southeast Security Committee, and of course, you've had those challenges in the Southeast with different calls by different people that this is how it should be done. But there's been a lot of talk about political will, which might tie back to what you said about the government giving the security agencies a marching order. So from your end, from the trends you have seen maybe in your region, and putting into consideration, you know, the northern governors also saying that, well, there should be an end to open grazing and all that. Do you think we're really heading in the right direction to getting a solution to this?
Yes, I congratulate the northern governors. Based on that their communique, based on that their resolution, I think they should receive standing ovation from every Nigerian. We know the source of insecurity, and they are making bold to address that source. Look, let me tell you the contradictions of this nation. Number one, the sitting government said that they want to diversify our economy, making agriculture the primary source of a livelihood for this nation. And environmentally, it is doable. But then, that policy, as laudable as it is, you should tie it with ranching so that cows are not, let loose into the farms that people are on their own cultivating, to give muzzle to this policy of diversification of our economy. They are farming to give muzzle, to give strength to this policy. So it is a contradiction for cows to be let loose to destroy the farms, agriculture in that sector that backs up the policy of the government. It's a contradiction. There is no place in the world today that people roam the bush with cows. What is more economical? What is technologically viable? What is viable for security of this nation is to ranch, remove cows from roaming about and save the lives and the future of this nation by mopping up these small boys, these young people that follow these herders, give them education. Otherwise, they become a thorn in the flesh of Nigeria in the future. If you don't educate them, if you don't expose them to what they are supposed to enjoy.
Okay. Well, General, Parliament to jump in and bring this up, because, I mean, you've said the northern governors have called it. But there are dissenting voices, and they've been for a while, in the Southeast about what the governors are doing about coming up with a security situation or outfit or organization, as different regions have done. So is it that the Southeast governors are playing politics with security? Because you were reported to have said your security committee has provided the framework, but it looks as if that's where it all ends, the framework.
Well, from the information available to me, I think the governors will soon roll out a security outfit. I believe governors in the Southeast will soon roll out one. I remember that they were the first to come up with joint security efforts in August 31st, 2019. But somehow, I do not understand the technicalities that stop them from concluding that particular plan. But be that as it may, I think they are concluding efforts. From the information available, I think they have banned open grazing because it is destroying farms and resources. And they are also trying to do something about the joint security infrastructure. But when, I'm not in a position to say, but be that as it may, I think that each of the states have utilized their security framework as it is today to give the Southeast and their states specifically the most secure zone in this nation. Southeast is the most secure geographical zone in this country today. It's incontestable. Efforts have been put in towards achieving that. It did not come, it did not fall down just like that. The governors put in efforts to achieve this particular situation, security situation in the Southeast. So, in as much as it is desirable for this to be formed, but I want to say that based on the security situation in Southeast, the governors have done well in area of security.
Okay, General, just quickly as we wind down on this conversation. So while there's no data, as it were, for that security network or outfit, you may have seen videos online of the Eastern Security Network, and it seems as though that group is also catching some traction in the Southeast. What is the position of your committee and, by extension, the leaders in the Southeast regarding the ESN?
ESN is an illegal contraption. There is no security outfit that can work without the constitutionally established authority. There is none. Anything outside of constitutional arrangements, anything outside of the legally political, constitutionally established institutions is illegal. As far as I'm concerned, that network, security network, is nothing but shrouded in insecurity. It's insecurity in itself. So we must be worried that an illegal outfit is coming up with what they call security outfit. No. Dog must give birth. I mean, a snake must give birth to something that has a long tail. So it is not comfortable for whatever they call themselves to exist in the Southeast. They are not accepted, they are not recognized, they are not used by the governments of the day in the 5 states of the Southeast. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, that security agency, ESN, is an illegal contraption.
All right, Major General Obi Umahi, thank you very much indeed for your perspectives this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, back in a moment. Stay with us.
We're still talking security, but of a different kind now, if you like. We're talking about security of the pocket, because all matters that have to do with the economy directly affect the pocket of the ordinary Nigerian. And when that happens, it becomes a matter of big concern. We're talking about the imminent increase, it was saying, in the pump price of fuel. Sometime last year, the federal government did announce a full deregulation of the downstream sector, saying that, all manners of subsidies will be removed. And now that the price of crude oil is going up on the international market, which is still a major foreign exchange earner for Nigeria, the question is, what are we going to do to cushion the effect in Nigeria, as we do not have refineries that are capable of producing our local needs? And we still have to import basic fuel needs, especially PMS, which a lot of Nigerians still use to fuel their cars. Well, we're talking this morning with the Vice President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Mr. Joe Ajaero. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much, Deputy President.
Oh, okay, there's a difference between the vice and deputy. You must forgive me.
Thank you
The
very
Deputy President of the NLC. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'm sure that you must have seen this coming. This is one of the things that would have, been of a source of concern to the Nigerian Labour Congress in the wake of the announcement of a food regulation of the sector. This is something I would have agitated your minds, because you will know that when the price of crude oil goes up on the international market, with our refineries in the state that they currently are, the benefits will accrue, any at all, that will accrue to the ordinary Nigerian will be very little. How are you hoping to navigate this as a labor union?
Well, thank you very much. This is an old story, you know. Governments from Murtala, from whatever, they have been tampering with prices of petroleum. That's what we call the common PMS. But this one, you know, when government came up with the idea, you know, Labour said you can only deregulate when the refineries are working. You are not going to operate any system, deregulation, that is import-driven. That's clear. And we have equally raised issues. Nigerians, are they praying for the price of crude to increase or for it to fall down? As a major oil-producing country, our prayer is for the price to increase so that we can sell our product. Now, if we sell our product at a higher price, how does it now translate to, even here, for us to suffer again? What ordinarily should have been, again, a profit for Nigerians to laugh, you know, that they are making a lot of money from the sale of crude, is now becoming a punishment. That is why, to a very large extent, even as we talk today, we are meeting with the government side again by around 21st of February. This matter is still on the table, because we are finding it difficult, you know, to go on the same stage with them. Because deregulation doesn't mean that you have to buy the product. And by the time you fix prices of these products based on Forex and maybe inflation globally, you are creating a vicious circle. Because if you increase by March, inflation will go high as a result of the increase.
And we're already in dire straits with inflation.
Fine. Foreign exchange will go high. And then by the month of April, you now review inflation and you say it has increased. And then you need to increase prices again. So that policy is not working. And as a labor union, we will stand against it, you know, because if by the time even they came up with the September increase, they came up with all manner of promises, palliatives, this and that, getting buses that will run, you know, even run on gas. You know, none of those things have been fulfilled. And what they are doing is the increases in tariff, electricity tariff, and, you know, petroleum products. And when you look at this, these are prescriptions from the IMF. You know, oh, increase.
Indeed, you know, well, yes, indeed, the IMF has I think they sent a message saying that they were quite happy with the fact that the Nigerian government seems to be on the path to growth with, you know, the recent policies. However, we also know that the subsidy system, as was being maintained by the federal government, was not sustainable. How many years ago we knew that the federal government was already beginning to borrow to subsidize the price of petrol. So when Labour continues to insist, first, before you can begin to talk about deregulation, do you think that Labour's expectations were realistic?
Oh, very realistic. You see, the refining of petroleum products is not rocket science. If you even allow the young people in the Niger Delta, if you go there, people are refining. And I've given this example on channels before. In the then defunct Biafra, you know, these products were being refined with even drones. All this. So it doesn't.
But that's not how we want it to be refined for the entire country.
So you set up modular refineries, at least for domestic consumption.
We've seen about at least 2 of that being
those
set
ones,
up.
the one they just organized in a way, is not even producing petroleum product, which is what is affecting us now. That is why immediate need. Now, if you don't do that, and
what,
you say,
what is it producing? Sorry to interrupt you.
I think they have that gasoline and some other products. There's a Smith whatever in Owerri. Now it's now that they're giving them license to see whether they are going to produce PMS. You know. Now the other person that is about producing it will be Dangote. And if he's the only producer, and he has equally announced that he's going to sell at international rate because he's investing to make money. Now we may end up, transferring public monopoly to private monopoly, which may be more dangerous. So as we talk now, they are talking of subsidy. We want to know what constitutes the subsidy. What are you subsidizing? If you produce cassava in your house, do you sell that cassava, to somebody that processes to gari, and then you buy gari, and you say you are not subsidizing the amount you use in carrying it to where the person will process it, fry it, the amount is going to equally use to bring it back. Even the most primitive economy, old women in the village, when they produce that cassava, they take away they are going to use with their family and sell it as cassava. If they can't if they can't refine it and sell refined product. Now, this is what we're expecting in Nigeria. Nigeria can't carry crude, add freight charges, add admin charge. If you watch, NEMASA will charge, NPA will charge, they will add all those things and factor it in and bring it back to us. So unless you refine domestically, if you refine here, those charges they are telling you will not be there. And most importantly, in that crude, there are no less than 50 to 100 products in it. So when they talk of charge on it, as if it's based on only PMS, yes, that's the lies they factor in. So the subsidy does not exist, actually, if you look at it. It's just a way of padding so many issues so that the amount will be high and they bring it back to us here. As far as labor is concerned, they keep on telling you subsidy, subsidy. Who determines this subsidy? For a product, you have both competitive and comparative advantage that you are producing. You are still subsidizing it. To do what? Are you subsidizing crude or you are subsidizing petroleum products? Why will you even ship it out?
Do you see, is there a lack of sincerity in all that is happening, especially with matters around deregulation? Because we've been on this matter for way too long. We had a big protest around this matter in 2012. The Occupy Nigeria movement came up as a result. Some people will even say that one of the reasons why this current government was able to make headway was on the back of that. Do you sense sincerity? Because one of the things we're told is that if you deregulate, more players will come into the market, and before you know what's happening, yes, it will take a while, but eventually the price of petrol will become more competitive and it will come down in Nigeria. Are we seeing any step? This deregulation policy was announced last year. At least sometime between April and June last year was when we heard the regulation policy. So far, have we seen players, major players, apart from Dangote, who have been expecting his refinery to come on stream since 2019, have we seen any other major players say, look, we're going to go into the sector because we think this is a viable market? Or do you think that there's a lack of sincerity on the part of government?
Well, let me call it leadership quality. I think our problem has been problem of governance and leadership. Even in 2015, when they came out with a big bang, they said they were deregulating. That was the only increase that, even despite labor's protests, they did not reduce anything. They went full length. And each year they will tell you they have deregulated. Meanwhile, they are still involved in price fixing. Now, if we have a product that is deregulated, so to say, clearly, they can't fix the price. The NNPC and all these ones, the price will be controlled by market forces. Maybe the price in Lagos may be cheaper than the one in Imo State or Abia State, because assuming it lands at the port in Lagos, then those ones will equally add local transportation costs and increase it. But here, they fix the price So when you go into price fixing, you know, you can't regulate in a deregulated sector. No. So you allow it to market forces. Now, I don't think that there are...
Is that you can't regulate or you can't regulate price?
If a product, you can't regulate price in a deregulated market. Because we're talking of market forces driving the price. Or if the market forces takes it up, it goes up. Because if you check even products like Gari, you know, the same amount they're selling in Lagos is not what they're selling in Sokoto. It's not what they're selling in Ibadan. It varies. You know, those are already naturally deregulated based on the environment there. So that seems to be what they are telling us. But well, I talked about leadership. You see, in 1980, for instance, $1 was 80 kobo. Why? There was no magic. The Volkswagen of Nigeria was assembling. Peugeot in Lagos. Peugeot was assembling in Kaduna. Leyland was in Ibadan and all that. Then Bata, Leonards were producing shoes. Kaduna Texime, you know, Asaba Texime, Aba Texime, all those ones were produced. So these products, we were producing them in Nigeria, and we didn't have need for foreign exchange, you know, to determine our mode of doing business. And our refineries actually, you know, were working, at least for domestic consumption. By the time we went to the market, and we say things are determined by the market, and then we must import textile materials, we must import vehicles, we must import, then we need to go for exchange rate. We need to check the rate of the dollar to Naira. And then the thing has equally, we had to privatize. You know, then Cable Metal was producing all the wires we are using for electrical products, and all the dams here were working fully Nigerians. So by the time you have a leadership that believes that government has no business in business and everything should be given out, some of the companies, they close it. And then by the time they look at the cost of production in Ghana or Cotonou, they import those things. By that moment, Nigerians who were working, they will no longer be on employment. And everything will now depend on the cost. So why will I fix a product here at the cost of Naira, the product that I produce here, sorry, at the cost of dollar? Why will I compare what they are selling it in Niger Republic, in the US? Those ones, are they comparing what they are selling their own to what we are selling in Naira? So by the time you see a follow, you know, leadership, you know, that are saying, oh, this is the policy, this is an exchange rate, this is a inflation rate in America, and not how it affects us, this thing will continue. Now, closely related to that is even a tariff. The way it is moving, because they have tailored it around tariff, electricity tariff as well. Why it was NEPA? Inefficient, the same 4,000 megawatts these people are producing, but nobody was telling you there was inflation. There was exchange rate. But by the time the now model increases based on all these factors that are external to us, these factors are not within here. These are factors that are happening at international rate. And then maybe we are generating electricity at Kainji and Shiroro, and somebody will be telling you the price of electricity in America. If we depend on that, then we don't have a patriotic leadership class that will build Nigeria based on Nigerian needs, based on domestic needs. If we do that, we will not be talking of IMF. IMF will not be telling us we are doing well and we are doing badly, except when we are owing them.
But increasingly, people are losing faith in the ability of governments to run businesses. Increasingly, people treat government business as no man's business. It is everybody's business and nobody's business. And so, and we have continually seen that many government businesses that are run inefficiently. So you don't think that itself, by itself, already makes a case for government to hands off and then, you know, be only involved in regulation of the private sector, so to speak?
Well, I need some empiric evidence to show that businesses run by individuals, you know, are doing better than businesses run by government. Because government we are talking of were those nationalistic governments whose aims were for development of the nation. Now, by the time you separate social services to economic service with the motive of profit maximization, these are two different things. If you are running NEPA or NNPC, to make profit, it's different than when you are running it to give people services. These are two different things, and we must determine them.
Do they have to be mutually exclusive?
Well, you strike a balance so that the people will benefit. Let me give you an example. That wasn't the major reason why all this privatization and government hands-off was done. Let me take NITEL for example. As at the date, they say they are selling NITEL, or they were selling NITEL. NITEL was still declaring profit. Now, what they did was to demobilize NITEL to bring in MTN, Glo, all these other ones. As at today, NITEL has not been privatized, as we talk now. But they were making profit. Now, why don't you have, like you were saying, whether they are exclusive to one another, a mix? Why can't you have public-private, competition, so that people will be able to have choice? If I don't want NITEL line, I will pick MTN, I'll pick Glo, I'll pick any of these ones. Now you have to kill NITEL, definitely, because publicly run institutions are cheaper all over the world. That component does not lose it. Now we can combine efficiency. Efficiency can contest with a price. Okay, I don't want to take this one is efficient. When you do one hand, it will go around. But I will take this one because the cost is low. And that is what the market is all about. The market is not all about dictatorship of the market. Everybody follow this line. It's if I don't want to buy yellow Gary, I buy white Gary, maybe because it's cheaper. There will be other factors that constitute it. But this one now is like everybody go this way. And then it's affecting us so much. I don't think that, they have some level of, they have nationalistic orientation in this policy, in this market, everybody is rushing to.
So what are your thoughts now? I mean, we are already told to prepare for a price hike. I think just a few days ago, we heard that the landing cost of petrol was now at 118 naira. So it does look like a price hike is imminent. Just last week, it was 158 naira at even the NNPC pumps. This week, it was 163 naira. With that increment of 180 naira at the landing costs at the ports right now, it does look like we're expecting an increase in the price of PMS. So what exactly is going to be Labour stance? You're due for another meeting in a few days. What are you going to be telling the federal government?
Well, this is clear. In fact, even Mayor coming out with that announcement, because the Minister of State Petroleum was at the meeting with us, where we agreed to consult further. Because the committee we are working on was based on the September increase. That's the committee that was set up, and we're trying to look at the effects of the September fuel increase and how to mitigate its effects on Nigerians. Now, in the course of meeting, we have not even submitted the report. If the minister and others are talking of another increase, then there's already a problem. Clearly, because we have not been able to address the effects of the September, increase, which we are supposed to submit the report by 21st of this month. And then, but the question I keep on asking, and I have raised this earlier, why must you bother us with landing costs for a product we have here? That's the issue, because if we situate that, and that was why Labour insisted that there must be domestic refining, and it's for domestic consumption. Turnaround maintenance, they say they can finish it. We had a short-term agreement with them. Or maybe in the next 12 months or 11 months, we can do turnaround maintenance in some of these local refineries and start bringing products for Nigeria for consumption here. So that these people will have time to sell their crude. And when they sell their crude, they make a lot of money. But once you sell a crude for $50, and then you import product for $70, somebody will ask you, You know, are you in right sense?
Events have already taken over the September price. I mean, it has so since gone up beyond the September price. You say you are still at September price.
Yeah.
You have a meeting in 2 days. What are you going to be telling government? Are you going to allow the price hike go on, or are you going to say, no, we're not going to agree, you have to stay action?
Well, the issue is that we must finally determine this issue of increase in prices clearly. After the September, before either November or so, there was another increase they announced. And we insisted, I could remember, insisted, and they had to do reduction again because we are still talking. Now, this is going to be a vicious circle. It's not like even if they increase now, this month, that they will not increase next month. So we have to determine this because Nigerians can't move this way, on what is the value of the naira, to the dollar. When it changes in 2 weeks' time, we increase again. When it changes, we have to determine it. That's the position of labor once and for all. So that what is happening here will not be, based on influence on what is happening from external.
Don't you think that the meetings need to be more frequent and more intense?
Yeah, I think so. But you see, it equally takes a lot of resources. The business of unionism and governance cannot be just this meeting on 2 products of electricity tariff and fuel increase. I think there should be other things. Assuming the refineries are working today, we don't need these meetings.
Are you going to be doing anything in that regard? Is Labour going to be doing anything in that regard? After all, the people who work in the refineries are also under the command of Labour.
That's why we're insisting, so that we'll save jobs. If we continue to import these products, our members working in all those refineries will be out of job.
Well, we have to thank you so much for coming around on the program. Mr. Joe Ajaero is the Deputy President of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Well, that's why we have to leave the show this morning, but not without taking your comments, and it looks like we have a lot of them. Let me quickly start from here. Sheung Paul says, truth be told, our judiciary system has been politicized. They dance to the tune of the ruling government directly or indirectly. They are puppets and being used to further suffer citizens. Well, very strong comments by Sheung Paul, but that's what he feels.
Dr. Ponsa, you got quite a piece here. It says legal, institutional, cultural, and power structure impediments have created gaps which are currently being exploited by conflict and crime economy. We need social re-engineering to these anomalies of crime and conflict towards economic and environmental regeneration. The economic option remains the most potent weapon against crime and conflict. In the Nigerian context, banditry and other related crimes are a byproduct of conflict in the system. We must address the root cause of conflict to stamp out crime.
All right, this one from Nduka from Owerri, Imo State, says, concerns open grazing, says the approach to this is somehow simple. If only the FG will be sincerely committed. I so much believe that the attraction to the real herders is the grasses in the Greenland areas. Fine, he says, ban the roaming around, establish ranches in their various bases, empower the federal ministries of agriculture in the various states to cut, harvest all those grasses in the Greenland areas across the entire state and be making them available to the various ranches. I mean, interesting solution, but it goes on, and we appreciate you for that, Nduka.
Well, this one is from Mohammed. Says, from all that is happening with security leading to disunity among citizens, I can only see one writing on the wall, which is disintegration. Just so sad, most citizens can't see it. Now, this is definitely something that we are hoping will never happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, indeed, I believe many citizens are seeing it, and they're already beginning to raise the alarm. Fire is on the mountain. Who's running? Are we trying to put it out? Well, the questions will continue to ask and seek answers for here on Sunrise Daily. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a great day.
I'm Chain Bellinuso. We'll see you again tomorrow.